listening to I Am Refocused Radio with your host, Shamaya Reed. This show is designed to inspire you to live your purpose and regain your focus. And now, here's your host, Shamaya Reed.
Welcome back to I Am Refocused Radio. Once again, we are here today, and just like any other time, we have another amazing show lined up for y'all today. Today, we're talking to a special guest. This guest from childhood marked a physical and psychological abuse, but that drove him to amazing heights. He's done some amazing things. I mean, you talk about work ethic. This guy, he's not playing. He did some amazing work, and he's going to share his amazing story that starts with his book that we got to talk about today, because he has a book that I want you all to check out. But I want to tell you first about him. From driving a cab in New York City in the 1970s, sometimes performing at the White House with President Jimmy Carter by day, but he also was picking up passengers in his taxi that same very night. I just want to cut to the chase, because I just want to bring him to the show, because I know he can give a more powerful storytelling than me. So first and foremost, David Singer, thank you for your time being on the show today. First and foremost, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Shamaya, for having me. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you being on. I had to cut to the chase because, man, you fast forward just a little bit. You end up singing with legends, singing. I meant to say sharing stages with legends. Right. And you wrote a powerful book, and it's From Cab Driver to Carnegie Hall, filled with humor. I love comedy, so that's up my speed. Some heartbreak, but also some hard-won wisdom of never giving up. Right. So kind of share with us real quick the 3 powerful takeaways that you kind of explore in your book, the short-term goals versus long-term goals.
Well, I just wanted to survive. I was told growing up, my dad just said, you seem to be pretty good at the clarinet, so you better play that really well, because you really can't do much else. So, but he was, my parents have a story too. And so in my book, I talk about the abuse, some of the abuse that I suffered. So, but they had a story, and, they had traumatic experiences in their lives, running from the Nazis or the Russian Revolution, the Depression, and no money, no jobs, abuse in their own families. And so the first thing I just thought of was just survival. There was no choice rather than to work hard, and I didn't have any money to fall back on. I just, that's why I was driving a cab. Nothing wrong with driving a cab or selling welding rod, sometimes climbing fences and running from guard dogs to get to the welders so that they could try my stuff, and that's the only way I could sell them. Selling telephone rests on the streets of New York in front of Grand Central Station until the police came by and confiscated all of my stuff. And I used to buy the telephone rests, those soft things you used to put on on the phone. I guess this was before cell phones, as I'm really ancient. So people could put it on there like this, and then they could do whatever they wanted to in their office. So I would buy them for $2.50 and sell them for $5 each. And that was part of making a living as well. So a big part of my story was just survival. Quitting, not going to work wasn't an option. Of course, I wanted to try to do something that I sort of liked, and music was always something dealing with emotions of composers. Even if they lived hundreds of years ago, they were humans. They had their hearts broken. They had their own struggles that they had to go through. So they wrote music that reflected their life, whether it was sad or happy or whatever it was, heroic. And so it was my job to interpret, and so of course I was able to be around great musicians who I just admired, and ultimately got to play with these great musicians. I've been very, very blessed, very lucky. and I worked hard as well. So survival, loving what I do still at 77 years old, and playing for people, playing for sick people, trying to help people who are also facing obstacles now. And the other thing is just being very blessed, and that I'm able to do something that I really love to do, and that I can give back to my community and make others feel some of the emotions that great music allows us to feel. So those are three things that have kept me going and still keep me going.
And we rewind the clock a little bit.
Yeah.
You discovered the clarinet in 5th grade. Now, that's a very interesting story. If you don't mind sharing with our audience, tell us a little bit about that.
My life mostly at 5th grade was just being outside, playing baseball, going to the beach, and then coming home where it wasn't so pleasant. But I had a crush on a girl, Marie Rocky, and I heard that she was going to enter a talent show. And so I wanted to enter a talent show too, because I wanted her to notice me. So I came home and I told my dad I want to enter a talent show. But he said, "But David, you don't know how to do anything." So fortunately, he was the band director at the local high school. My dad was the band director. My mom was a housewife. She played violin very beautifully, but she didn't have much of a career. But anyway, so he started bringing home instruments. The clarinet just felt right, and I learned a song called "Long, Long Ago," and a very short song, and played and won the talent show, and beat Marie Rocky, and then she really didn't want to have anything to do with me. So it didn't help. But so I guess my first love, aside from baseball and my dog, Dee Dee, was the clarinet. It started off, and that's the way I began.
You said in your book that you had some issues at the home with your father and your mom.
Yeah.
There was a point in time where you finally confronted your dad. Tell us about that when you got older. That's when you did it. What happened next? So I guess I'm going to start off. My dad was in the in Second World War. He was in the Army, and he would just say to me, I asked him one time I found a Nazi's officer's knife with a swastika in our closet. And I asked him, "Where'd you get this?" And he looked at me. He said, "Where do you think I got it?" So he told me a story that what he did basically was he lived in a foxhole and he killed Nazis. Well, he was awarded a Bronze Star at the Battle of the Bulge, and when he came back from the war, he grew up in a very religious house, very religious. But when he came back from the war, after he saw so much death and he was killing people, he didn't believe much in God anymore, and he must have had what they now call PTSD. And because he had this rage about him, and he just would beat the heck out of me with his belt, and it was horrible. But doing this book helped me and helps me understand what's going on and what that they have their own traumas. Anyway, one night I was a grown man. I was visiting from New York, and we're sitting around watching television. I didn't stay with my parents at night. I went to a hotel. I didn't feel safe staying with them. So I asked them before I left from my hotel, I said, I asked my dad if his dad had beaten him when he was a kid. And he looked at me and my mom gasped. She had a lot to do with the abuse as well. My dad said, when he got uncomfortable, he started to kind of snicker, kind of laugh a little bit. And he said, why would you ask me such a question? And I said, well, if your dad didn't beat you,
then why did you beat me? And he was very quiet, and we just sat still for a few minutes. And I got up and I said, I'm going to go now. I love you, Dad. I love you, Mom. And I went out to my car, and I felt his presence behind me. Normally, when I was a kid, feeling him behind me was a very frightening kind of experience because I never knew what was going to happen. But somehow this was a much more gentle touch, and he pressed his face against the back of my neck, and he was kind of sort of crying, and he said, "Oh, David, I hope you forgive me. I hope you will forgive me." And I was kind of shocked, and I just said, it's sure, I told him I forgive him, and gave him a hug, and then got in my car and drove off. But that was very poignant to me, and it's just something I had to do. I just had to do that, And I also wanted to say many times over that I loved them, and later, after my dad passed in 2008, my mom lived to 2012, I told her that she was a good mom. It was important for me. I didn't want to feel guilty about anything. A kid doesn't know what's going on. The kid's beaten. They figure, first of all, that, this is just normal. Whatever happens at home is kind of normal. Well, and I thought it was my fault. Well, what was I doing that was, then later I understood it not to be my fault. But I just wanted them to know that I cared, I loved them, and I didn't want to have any regrets about that, just any more sadness. And when they finally did pass, well, I hate to say it, but that was kind of a blessing too. But my sister has a different relationship. She's 5 years younger, so she didn't experience any of this firsthand. But she has dreams about my parents all the time. She misses my mom especially, but our mom. But I don't think about them anymore. They're, I just don't. So yeah, it was unfortunate, but. There were times in my life where prayer helped a lot. And I was praying as a little kid. Please don't hurt me. Please don't, come into my room and whatever they were going to do. My mom had other things that she did that was abusive, physically. And that's, it's in the book. But, yeah. Anyway, so I dealt with it the best way I could. I faced them and got it off my chest. And one of the reasons I wrote the book was to give people an idea that you have a voice. We all have a voice, and we all have a certain amount of power if we use it right, and we can heal ourselves a little bit. It shouldn't be something, hopefully, that's going to cripple us for the rest of our lives, because it can. It really can, but it doesn't have to.
Once again, listen on Refocus Radio, watching us online, talking to our guest today, David Singer, all about his book as well, From Cab Driver to Carnegie Hall. I want to ask you next, there's a special moment that was in your book that your father had a reaction to a big premiere that you had in Los Angeles, the Los Angeles Chamber Orchestra. Tell us about that story.
Well, that was a lot of fun. A piece written by a Grammy Award-winning composer. He wrote it for me. Robert Aldridge is his name. He wrote Elmer Gantry, the opera, and being played from coast to coast. Anyway, he wrote me a concerto that I premiered with an orchestra, the orchestra that I played with for many years, Orpheus Chamber Orchestra. That's a story unto itself, because we started playing for free in that orchestra, literally for free, and we ultimately won Grammy Awards. We traveled all over the world, making recordings, and so that's a big success story that we started with nothing. But anyway, a special concert came about with the LA Chamber Orchestra, and at UCLA, my dad went to UCLA, so it was a big deal. And I performed in front of the orchestra, and my dad at that point could barely walk, and he had lung cancer, but he came to the concert, and afterwards, my family and a lot of people were, milling around me and in the lobby, but I didn't see my dad, and then I came into the audience again, and everybody had left, but I see this little old man, this bald head kind of forward, and I realized that was my father, this monster when I was growing up. And I came up from behind him, and I just told him, thank you for being there. And he looked at me, and he told me how proud he was of me, and we just come kind of full circle, and he died shortly after that, but just that he was there, and he had been so abusive, and so he hurt me in so many ways. But then, to have that moment where he was proud of me, and I did well, and he's partly responsible for my success, opening up doors for me that I wouldn't have been able to do by myself. And so it's a very mixed thing when your parents, it's heinous. They do something bad. They physically abuse you. It's just, it's like a dog. I feel like we're a dog. We're always going to come to our master with our tails wagging, just like a dog does. And anyway, that's my story. It's part of my story. I've been through some things, and there are certain things that help me. There's a mantra that I used. I don't know if you call it a mantra, but it's the word of SCORE, the word SCORE. And so whenever I've had to prepare for something, a concert, an interview, for a job, each of those letters means something. S stands for self-discipline, practice, study, do all of the labor, the work necessary to do well. If you want to be great on the radio, you do a lot of study about that. You watch other people, you find people you admire, whatever it is. If you're preparing to get take an interview, you study about the company, whatever. So S has to do with self-discipline, to take little steps each day towards your goal. C, concentrate on sending all negative energy away from you. It's not going to help to think about negative energy. I'm having a bad hair day, whatever. That's not a problem for you and me. But I mean, any negative energy, throw it away. That doesn't do you any good. O has to do with optimism. Think about when you have been successful. Think about those times when you really felt great about doing something that you like. And that's what you think about. R is relaxation from fear. Fear, worrying about what may happen, never helps. It never helps you. Fear hurts you, can hurt. Prepare, like your life depends on prepare, but don't worry and fear. It's just a crippling kind of thing. So R is relaxation from fear, and E, SCORE, is enjoyment. Love what you do, or find something to love what you do. And those things, before I would go to sleep, I would imagine myself regarding something I was going to do. I was going to play in Carnegie Hall. Wow, how am I going to feel? Well, I'm going to be nervous. I'll be excited. I'm going to take that walk out onto the middle of the stage, and I look at those 5 decks of rows of seats, and I'm going to be able to play. I'm going to be able, not like, oh my God, what's going to happen? I'm going to die out there. No, you don't think that way. You kind of talk yourself into it's going to be great. I know what I'm doing. I'm preparing every day. So all of these things can help you, positive visualization, ultimately succeed. That's helped me go from being a welder where and there's nothing wrong with being a welder. That's a great job, or driving a cab. It's a fine job. It wasn't something that I was wanting to be. I wanted to get involved with music because I always loved music. So I took little steps toward my goal, little steps every day, and I kept thinking about, whatever opportunity I was going to have. I would go through the SCORE, the thing before I would go to sleep at night, that I was going to be successful, and it helped. It helped a lot.
I like that. That's a great lesson right there. I never heard it put that way, and that's why we have people like you on the show, because now thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people are going to be able to say, you know what, I'm going to put that in my pocket, man. I'm going to say that because that's great. That's a great perspective to have, and looking through the lens of arts and culture, having that taste of music, right? Because not everybody can appreciate music creation, but understanding what it takes to create that environment, create that experience. I mean, it led you to the White House. Tell us about President Jimmy Carter. I mean, that had to have been a special moment. Were you able to visit the White House before then and have experience to, soak that in?
Well, that was a great moment. I performed for the Clintons at the White House, and that was an interesting story too, because that was in the last months of our innocence as a country. In terms of, that was just months before he left the presidency. I guess George W. Bush came on, and then September 11th, 9/11, 2001. So, and then once that happened, then everything changed in terms of security and all that kind of stuff. But the Carters, I was having these experiences where I was playing in Carnegie Hall one night, and then the next night, like you were saying, I was driving my cab, or I was performing. I performed with the actress Stockard Channing. I don't know if anybody knows her. She was in Grease, the movie Grease. She was in West Wing on TV. She's a great actress. Anyway, called The Lady in the Clarinet. I was like co-starring with this person who had been like a great star. And it was in Connecticut, and I was living in New York, and my car could barely work. The windshield wipers were threadbare. They weren't doing anything. The wheels were just kind of shaking, and it was wintertime and snow and the wind. So I was like on top of the world acting in this play with this great actress. And then my reality came back, and I got in my car, and I had to drive the 60, 70 miles home with, I didn't know if I was going to make it. Playing for Carter was great. It was with some other highly thought about musicians. Met the Carters, and remember shaking hands with Rosalind Carter, and remember she had the softest hands. I never felt such soft hands. I think this woman has not washed a lot of dishes. I had a feeling. But anyway, I had to get out of there because I had to go back to New York because I was on for driving a cab that night. And so later that evening, I'm driving passengers around mostly Manhattan, and I would say, "Guess what I did tonight? Or today? And I told them, and they they suddenly got really nervous. They looked at their watch. They wanted to get out of the cab. They thought, oh, this guy's hallucinating. A cab driver telling you that they played at the White House that day. I don't know many people believe you, but it was absolutely true. And so years later, like I say, when I was playing for the Clintons, that was a whole other thing, because we were invited to not play after the concert. We were invited to take part in a party he was throwing for his Hollywood friends, and Chevy Chase and Goldie Hawn, and I don't know, a lot of Hollywood people were there, and it was fun and members of Congress. It was fun to be part of that for an evening, and I didn't have to rush back to New York and drive my cab anymore. So I had sort of arrived.
Once again, talking to our special guest today, David Singer, here at Omni Focus Radio, watching us online as well, listening to us on radio. I know we got a little bit of time left, actually short on time radio, but over time for the podcast, I have to ask you about this. You also have taught music appreciation to over 100 college students. Tell us a little bit about that experience, being able to work with students specifically who have never heard of classical music or opera.
Yeah, I was a professor at Montclair State University in New Jersey, just across the river from New York City. And one of the things I did each semester was I worked with about 100 students each semester. The students at large, not music students, but students. It was an elective, and so one of the things that I did was I exposed them to opera. So opera, some people hear the word of opera. Oh, a lot of fat ladies, fat guys. They're singing, and I don't know what they're talking about. And what does it mean to why should I be interested? Well, the stories. For instance, Carmen is a very famous opera. Carmen is about a very beautiful woman who is a woman, she has a little bit of a past. She kind of lives on the street. She's gorgeous. She's a temptress. She gets arrested and put in jail. And the chief of police is looking at each of the cells, and he's kind of interviewing each of the prisoners. And he comes across her, and he sees her, and he starts asking her questions. He can't help but fall in love or lust with her. And she says to him that if you get me out of jail, we'll go away together. I'll be with you if you let me out of jail. So he has this great job. He's about to be married. His mother is depending on him. He throws it all away just so he can be with this woman. And he gets her out of jail, and they go away together. I won't tell you the whole story. Doesn't turn out well for anybody, but it's those kinds of stories. People fall in love, and the woman in La Boheme. I don't know if you ever saw Rent. Did you ever see the show Rent or hear about it? Well, it's about young people, artists, trying to live together and make it so that they can live. And they're living together in a renting a place in a terrible neighborhood in New York. It's freezing cold, but they have each other. It's a story of their life. So what I'm trying to say is, the stories of opera are very relatable to any of us struggling, trying to make a living, being in love, being left, or whatever. So anyway, they loved. I showed scenes from YouTube, sexy dances of Carmen, whatever. They all wanted to go to the opera, and they all wanted to see these operas after that. So that was one of the fun things. I got them excited about classical music and about the opera, and so hopefully it added joy to their lives. The class was pretty popular, and so that's what that was about.
But once again, been listening on Refocus Radio, talking to our guest today, David Singer. Yeah. And make sure you get a copy of his book, From Cab Driver to Carnegie Hall. I want to ask you real quick before we sign off, what's the best way people can find you online?
So singerclarinet.com. Singer, like opera singer, clarinet, Clarinet, singerclarinet.com. And you get a prize if you get some kind of. I've made a lot of recordings, and you can hear me on a lot of the recordings. If you go to, of course, you go to Amazon. It tells you all about the book. Here's just the book, From Cab Driver to Carnegie Hall, and I thank you very much for having me on. It was a great pleasure.
Like always, David, thank you for your time, man.
Thank you.